Ladies and gentlemen, it is the 80th anniversary of the Railway series books. 1 year ago exactly.
Oops.
I actually started this project 12 days before that anniversary and really wanted to make that day my deadline. An impossible deadline realistically. So as I began watching the movies, typing the script, and doing the editing, the release date got pushed back. Again, and again, and again. Guys, I will not lie when I say that this has been driving me insane all year. I am so sorry it took this long. Oh yeah, back to the funny blue train. I always loved reading the original books, despite never collecting them all. But what I love even more was the TV show, which made the island of Sodor feel more real than it ever did before. And then we have the movies. Unfortunately, trains doing their job or having mild fun while the calming background acts as a visual eye candy is not going to be something that sells well for a big budget movie. You gotta have the climatic chases or fights, the gimmicky themes like pirates or magic, and as many new locations and characters as you can because, obviously. You can probably already tell by now that while I do have nostalgia for Thomas and Friends, I'm not crazy about the theatrical movies. And you're right. I watched each film the month they came out until King of the Railway back in 2013, but as a kid, they didn't really impress me. But I'm a movie reviewer now, and instead of doing nothing for my childhood icon's 80th anniversary, as well as Magic Railroad's 25th anniversary in July, let's do a ranking video traveling down memory lane while also checking out the films that I didn't see. I'd like to quickly add in that last minute that these opinions are opinions. They're my personal thoughts on the films, and it doesn't mean anything beyond that. So if you like a film that I hate, or vice versa, please don't be mad at me. Heck, feel free to share your opinions in the comments. I love reading them. I would also like to mention that the audio is going to sound funny for most of the video. I tried desperately to fix each segment months after finishing them, but come the end, I was basically like, f*** it. My voice is comprehensible, and that's what matters the most. So from 14th place to 5th place, my voice might sound like I'm speaking directly into a fan. And just a little warning, it's gonna take a while to get to a movie that I at least find passable. So let's start, cause we got an awfully long way to go. Oh shit. Dropped my phone. Misty Island Rescue is actually more abysmal than I remember. I honestly can't believe this exists. If there's a positive that could give this dumpster fire of a movie, it's that the design of Misty Island reminds me of Grizzleheim. Man, I love playing that world. Aside from that, everything else is just ass. Not a single thing piqued my interest nor made me think, wow, that was creative. I think I'll have to do a recap of the story just so I can list my problems a bit better. The start of the film hypes up a rescue center that's being built, which doesn't play a part in the main story, which, oh boy, we'll get to later. Thomas is excited to deliver some Joby wood from Brendan Docks to the rescue center. Diesel wants to deliver the wood too, and Thomas's first response is borderline racist? Like way more than was typically depicted in the show?
I'm sure Sir Topham Hatt means a really useful steamy. You'll never be that.
So, Diesel can't be useful because he's a diesel? What the f***? Worst part is that a few minutes later, the first act ends up proving Thomas's racist comment right. Diesel steals the logs and accidentally loses the wood. Thomas is the hero for saving him, and Diesel is never brought up again. So, along with the fact that the first 15 minutes of the film mean nothing, it also teaches kids the toxic moral that one is better than the other, and to be mean to someone who is different from you. How exactly does this get proved by the writing team? Thomas's stupid ass is then rewarded to work at a rescue center on the mainland. Not the one the movie is themed around, but a completely different one. And to get there, Thomas needs to take a ship which is full, and there's conveniently a raft chained to the boat. Thomas uses it, he's still in steam for some reason, and the chain snaps because of course it does. Thomas now ends up on Misty Island and meets the most annoying, nothing new characters of all time. This one in particular only exists for one thing.
That's right. 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 That's right.
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
We're now at the middle chunk of the movie, where it's just a bunch of fluff to pad out the runtime. So speeding through all this crap of Thomas teaching the locals the right way, and he knows better because he's from Sodor, really think about that for a second. But anyways, Thomas gets the locals to bring some wagons of wood through an underwater tunnel leading to Sodor. The three keep telling Thomas that they don't have enough oil to get all the way to the end. Alright, so don't go then! Thomas doesn't need their help. He's pulled heavier and longer loads before. This idiot even isn't pulling anything. Why didn't he have to go along? The four of the men continue and the tunnel caves in while the logging locals run out of oil because of course. Thomas sends an SOS symbol which can be seen by everyone in Sodor who have been searching for Thomas for days. And this fat, dumb decides that instead of using the rescue center that the film kept hyping up, he's going to bring 3 of his engines to the unknown island. Why the are you using engines to find him? And why your top-class express engine? Why the couldn't you just use Harold to do a quick flyover, which would have served his purpose in the movie? Or use that new boat character whose personality is as blank as cardboard to sail to the island? Okay, I gotta stop right there. This segment is getting way too long. Everything I've mentioned is about half my gripes with this movie. Things just happen in this movie. It doesn't matter if whatever it does ties with the plot or make any sense. If it gets our characters from point A to point B, that's all that matters. There's no moral within the story, at least one that aren't toxic. The plot is not thought out well. None of the new things or reoccurring characters are ever put into use. Everyone is dumb as bricks. This movie is just so broken on so many levels. And oh my god, the overuse of rhymes was so annoying. Easily the worst Thomas movie ever. I am so happy that I will never have to talk about this film ever again or see these 3 dumbasses face ever again.
We have the logs!
And you haven't!
That's right.
Get off you hillbilly stereotypical bucktooth. Alright, the birth of Satan itself. Big world, big adventures. A lot of you probably thought this would be at the bottom of the ranking, and believe me, I get why. But I have Misty Island Rescue below this film because this concept is actually interesting and this story is somewhat cohesive. However, with that said, the concept and story is still in order for the franchise to reach a bigger audience, Mattel made the writing team have Thomas travel around the world. On paper, this isn't a bad idea, and it opens to numerous opportunities, as well as making a ton of toys. But the direction they took makes the film feel neutered and boring. Thomas goes around the world with a cocky race car named Ace because he wants to be the first engine to do so, and he does it without Sir Topham Hatt's knowledge. Thomas ends up in Africa where he pulls a long train. He meets Nia and they arrive at the next country where they pull a long train, and rinse and repeat. Wouldn't it have been more plausible and exciting if Thomas was going to different railway shows instead of aimlessly following around Lightning McQueen? I'm sure that would have been a fun movie to watch. The Great Race kind of proved that. All Thomas does in these countries is pull along trains of freight cars from one city to another. He hardly gets to meet any other engines or learn about their country in a tasteful way. It makes the film a very boring experience. Going back to the plot, everywhere in Sodor meanwhile is worried because Thomas is missing. Wow, like this hasn't been done to death before. Throughout the movie, Thomas hates the new engine and doesn't want their help, but over time apologizes for his attitude, and come the end of the film, the two becomes friends. Wow, like this hasn't been done to death before. The plot is so uninspired and formulaic. We've seen Thomas fulfill his dream of seeing the world many times. We've seen similar relationships to Thomas and Nia, and we've seen everyone looking for Thomas 2 times previously. It just comes off as very lazy and sad. Another humongous gripe I have is how the countries are portrayed. The stereotypes shown in this film is you'd hear from middle-class white people who have never boarded a plane. There's no research put into these, and it shows. Africa is just a big desert with zebras and giraffes. South America is rainforest and carnival. America is mesa, cowboys, and the Wild West. They're all literally the stereotypes people think of when they don't do a quick Google search. I know for certain they didn't Google their information because a simple look on a map will tell you there's no train yard west of the Golden Gate Bridge. Imagine how more interesting it would be if Thomas got to visit some of the most famous railways in the world. What if he went to Japan and the young audience got to learn about the Shinkansen Railway and their bullet trains? What if in Africa, Thomas got to travel down the Garden Route, a beautifully scenic railway the South African Blue Train uses? What if in America he sees the Great Northern Railway or something? I don't know, educate us on trains. That's why kids tune into this franchise. That just about sums up the negatives I have. There was an idea that could work, but instead of doing simple online research and occasionally revisiting the storyboard, we now have the most half-assed Thomas movie yet if the unfinished animation wasn't already apparent. So what about the positives? What did I like from this infamous movie that put it a space higher than Misty Island Rescue? Well, the Thomas theme played at one point. I don't like that Where's Thomas knockoff, but I like all the callbacks to the classic series. There's no narrator, which I didn't pick up on that until way after the movie was over. Nia, while not an amazing character, was pretty alright. Unlike in the show, she has some personality to her, and what sets her apart from every other newbie that Thomas is mean to, she rightfully calls Thomas out. It was nice to see. Her clashing with Ace is also pretty fun too. Speaking of Ace, I hate his design. It looks nothing like a Thomas character and is so visually distracting. But I do like him in this movie. He's meant to serve as a bad influence on Thomas, ditching him, egging him on to do dangerous things, tricking Thomas into abandoning Nia. That ending was honestly really great. There isn't any defeat, he isn't called out, Thomas just gets him to his destination knowing that Ace is not a good friend and says his goodbyes. It's a lesson that kids should learn. Don't hang out with the wrong crowd. And that's really it. It seems like a lot of positives, but none of that is really worth seeing when you have to trudge through 4 feet of garbage. Big World Big Adventures is derivative, it's stereotypical, the songs are bad, an interesting concept was wasted, it breaks all logic and reason, by far the most babyish Thomas movie pre-All Engines Go, it's just a huge mess. The fact that the movie starts with Wilbur Audrey almost getting hit by a speeding race car just adds insult to injury. And as a consequence, this movie and the last 2 seasons ultimately killed the franchise. What a backfire, Mattel. I don't like Day of the Diesels any more than Misty Island Rescue or Big World Big Adventures, but I'm placing above those dumpster fires because it has a few things that I like. For starters, the music is kinda good, and they made Diesel how he should be, scheming and pulling things to manipulate Percy. It's like going back to his time in Season 2 with Duck. I like their interpretation with Diesel 10. Nothing beats the nostalgic Magic Railroad version, but this depiction is interesting and cool. Instead of being some playground bully, he's kind of like a mafia boss. It's really neat and fun. The whole setup inside the Diesel Works even gives off the impression of a mafia meeting room. And there's also a bit where his claw reaches out and it looks like he wants to strangle the shit out of Percy. That actually got a chuckle out of me. And for the last of my positives, the gimmicky theme they have for the movie is actually put into use in the end. We get to see the fire engines doing their job instead of being an afterthought, unlike some other movie that will not be spoken in this household. Now, with all those positives listed, I can freely talk about the bad stuff. The biggest issue is the direction the movie took its concept. The plot of Day of the Diesels doesn't make any sense. The Diesels need Percy's help in order to take over the Steamworks, which is why they manipulate him throughout the movie. But why do they need him? When they get to the Steamworks, no one is there. What did Percy have to do exactly? They could have easily gone through with the plan without him. Okay, whatever. What about the conflict? What did they want the Steamworks for? The answer, just to take it over. Nothing elaborate or devious, just them trashing their newly claimed hangout because their old one is trashed. Okay, so why are you trashing this one? That's what happened to the Diesel Works, right? Where's the logic in this? And how do you think this plan was going to last with Sir Topham Hatt around? The story just feels like such a first draft of a plot. Like they didn't tweak anything to make it make sense. Diesel 10's mafia boss depiction is swept under the rug and he's now back to being a playground bully. And Thomas's racist comment that all Diesels are devious is proven right again. What's weird about that last one is that Thomas claims that all Diesels are devious despite having known Mavis, Salty, Boko, Rusty, and Daisy. But who am I kidding? There's no such thing as continuity. The director did Sausage Party for crying out loud. They could have easily made a different story with this concept and world building. You know how Percy was delivering a fire hose to the rescue center, and how Diesel 10 had it hidden? Well, here's an idea. What if it was for some grand plan where Diesel 10 intentionally sets the steamworks on fire? Without the hose for Flynn, the fire engine, the steamworks can't be saved. And without the steamworks, steam engines can't be repaired, and thus Diesels rule the island of Sodor. To have some middle ground for the Steamy versus Diesel conflict, you could have it where the other Diesels are like, wait a minute, this is going overboard. We wanted to be treated equal to Steamies, but you never said anything about burning down the steamworks, and so the other Diesels help the engines battle the fire, and an alliance is formed amongst the engines. It would create a believable conclusion that the engines themselves decide, shows the young audience that not all Diesels are bad, and keeps Diesel 10 true to his insane, problematic self. I came up with all of this all because of a fire hose. Another minor gripe I have is Percy's stupidity in this movie. It is great to have a movie that isn't solely focused on Thomas, and this is a very nice change of pace. But Percy's gullible and stupid actions completely kills that. I hate him in this movie. Also, there's no way Sydney survived that fire. Ladies and gentlemen, we're officially into meh territory. And yeah, Hero of the Rails is not particularly a favorite of mine. And putting it this low probably has a lot of Thomas fans pissed at me. This was the first ever form of Thomas media that introduced the world to a fully CGI Thomas and Friends. I remember this airing right before my family and I gave up cable, and while my mom had the living room carpet steam cleaned and our couches were lined up in the dining room like theater seats, I gave this film a watch and really loved it. The CGI was impressive, I liked Hero, and I looked forward to what the future had in store, which that last one turned out to be a fucking mistake. And after watching this movie 16 years later, I just came out of this feeling nothing. It didn't infuriate me or anything, it was just kind of boring. The CGI textures didn't age particularly well, it all screams 2009 and looks rather rough. Not all the shots look like shit though. The dawn and dusk scenes were surprisingly beautiful, especially for their first CGI film. The story is very long also, and drags a lot in the middle with not much going on. It's about Thomas trying to save an old, dilapidated tender engine from being discovered by Sir Topham Hatt and Spencer, thinking the former will send him for scrap. The film spends its time with Thomas going back and forth, sneaking leftover parts from the steamworks to Hero. I love it that the main steamy characters team up and defend each other against Spencer, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to keep me totally engaged, especially knowing the fact that Sir Topham Hatt would never scrap an engine of any kind. And it's really frustrating that this engines still think otherwise. Like, did the engines forget who this man is? He's been restoring broken or runaway engines since day one. Oliver and Toad, Old Slowcoach, Stepney, Bertram, Donald Douglas, everyone. Thinking Sir Topham Hatt wouldn't save an engine is absolutely ludicrous. I can see it with Spencer, but then I'm wondering why he's doing all this. His motives isn't really fleshed out. Why does Spencer want Hero scrapped? Does he feel threatened because Hero is big and fast? Is he wanting to hurt Thomas because saving Hero obviously means something to him? That's not right. Despite having no motives for the plot, I really do love how Spencer is written character-wise. He's cocky and smug, thinking he owns the island when he's obviously just a visitor. It's fun to watch, and I love it that the villain of the film is a steam engine instead of a diesel. Choosing Spencer also gives him more character in contrast to how he was before. I didn't have this next opinion way back when, but I really like Victor. He's the only other character who knows about Hero, yet listens to the steam engine's paranoia and doesn't tell Sir Topham Hatt. He even bothers to leave extra parts on the side for them. This motherfucker's great, you guys! If there's one last thing to quickly mention about Hero of the Rails, it's the narrator. I've gotten used to Michael Angelis for years, but there's numerous times where scenes go on and on because he has to explain what they're thinking, even though the engines can talk and freely express themselves now. I get why this film is considered a favorite amongst Thomas fans, but I don't have the heart in me to lie and say that I found this movie great, because I didn't. Not terrible, but definitely not my cup of tea. Going into this video, I actually expected to rank Journey Beyond Sodor higher. I mean, it's a goddamn prison break movie, and James is the best character here. And yeah, both of those are true. The concept is really great, Hurricane and Frankie are very effective antagonists, and that breakout in the end was really fun to watch. However, I absolutely loathe them getting away with what they did. They imprison 2 engines and cause attempted derailment, but Frankie cries like a little bitch and she and Hurricane get what they want. What lesson is this trying to teach kids? Sailor John in Legends of Lost Treasure was at least arrested, showing that your actions have consequences. Forcing sympathy on these 2 psychos and leaving the experimental engines to work for them just feels totally unfair. Speaking of the experimental engines are the next thing that I have a problem with. They're a lot like Bash Dash and Ferdinand, where they're just extremely irritating. The only difference is that they actually serve use into the story. But at the same time, 2 can be written off entirely. If there's one of these 3 that I would keep, it's Merlin. He's not great and a lot of times cringy, but his whole gimmick is based off of real history, which I find nice. I guess to finish off the subject of characters, we'll talk about the last one. This guy. I absolutely hate him. He's a nothing character and an annoying obstacle and really shouldn't exist. Not only because you could take him out of the movie and nothing would change, but because Mattel only made 1 toy of him. So, if he's not here to sell toys, then why is he here at all? Oh wait, I forgot. There's one other character in here, and he's the best part of the movie. James. He's either the smartest one in the film or the most relatable for audiences. I had a long chuckle when he broke the 4th wall by interrupting that stupid villain song. Not to mention, he's very in character and it's nice that James has a spotlight in a movie. And that's really about it to talk about with this movie, other than some minor stuff. The prison break is fun, as I said. The landscaping outside of Sodor looks so bare and empty, which I don't think it's fair to pick apart given that the animation studio went bankrupt during production. I don't like how this film breaks the laws of physics. It's all just a mess, really. The good and bad really clash with each other here. There was clearly a vision the writing staff had, and unfortunately, they didn't do a good job. I don't think I would find this as frustrating as the ones below this if they toned down the atrocious bouncing, the obnoxious songs, and how much of a crackhead Lexi is. Journey Beyond Sodor is just overrated. King of the Railway was the first time where I only watched the movie but didn't tune into the new season, because 2013 was when my tolerance of the current state of the franchise came to an end. Also because I played Minecraft for the first time. King of the Railway, at least to me, has the most gimmicky and the most nothing story of all. It's cool that the universe is explored upon in the beginning with King Godred's crown, but the movie just consists of jumping around from character to character and not sticking with one. It could be about Thomas, or Stephen, or James, or the Pack, or Gordon and Spencer, and the film annoyingly refuses to reveal the Earl's stupidly obvious plan from the beginning like it's trying to build up some mystery. Like, no shit. He's trying to restore Ulfstead Castle. What else are they doing? While the story may be all over the place, at least the characters are consistent. None of them feel out of character or straight up wrong. Even Toby was written okay. The bit where the writing team fixed the special coal retcon put a huge smile on my face, and I love Steven in this. He's such a fascinating character with excellent dialogue and a nice story. He's an old engine who's not as fast or strong as the newer trains, both steamy and diesel, and wanting to show his worth, he goes around the island to find work. It's very similar to the real world. I also love that scene where Stephen explains the Rainhill trials. It's historically accurate and educational, and the animation is very pleasing to watch. King of the Railway has a lot of good stuff in it, definitely, but its lack of a cohesive story hits a little hard. It's like a really long episode, and doesn't feel worthy of being a movie, if that makes sense. I have it above all the other movies because it's the first film on this list that doesn't make me frustrated or confused. It's okay for what it is, but it's just plotless and forgettable. King of the Railway is a movie that just exists. Sticking to the subject of movies that just feel like very long episodes, we have this Black Sheep. I was originally going to place Calling All Engines between Hero of the Rails and King of the Railway, but I don't know. Despite how professional and non-biased I'm trying to be, I've always had a soft spot for the model stuff, even if it is from the hit era. The props and sets are such eye candy, and the choice of characters is amazing. They brought back George and Derek of all characters, and that scene of the storm demolishing Sodor is so cool every time I watch it. CGI can never make destruction this fun and brutal looking. Unlike King of the Railway, this movie actually has a more cohesive plot, a heavy conflict, and actual stakes. But while that movie was entertaining to a certain degree, Calling All Engines just feels boring. Especially when the film talks down to the audience by incorporating learning segments. And the worst part is that these learning segments can't be removed since they are part of the story. So in order to follow the narrative, you have to sit through prolonged baby mush that puts your viewing experience to a complete halt. Not to mention, it makes the movie feel really dated, because the show fortunately doesn't use this anymore. I like how it wrote Emily into being part of the main STEAM team. She's not given too much focus, but having the sheds be destroyed and then rebuilt with extra space is nice. It doesn't just force her in or anything. It feels very natural. The dream sequence that everyone has is so dark that I love it. You can't help but feel bad for these guys. But by far the best thing about Calling All Engines is the Steamy versus Diesel subject. It handles the conflict better than whatever the heck Misty Island Rescue and Day of the Diesels did.
I'm sure Sir Topham Hatt means a really useful Steamy. You'll never be that.
The conflict starts because Thomas decided to be a cheeky jerk and play a prank on Diesel. This in turn causes a domino effect where everyone is trying to get even, and while the airport is destroyed and the lack of tourists might lead to the engines being out of service, the Steamies and Diesels agree, by themselves, to put their differences aside and get the airport rebuilt. That was a huge problem Day of the Diesels had where nobody decided on their own to work together. All it took was Sir Topham Hatt scolding them like a parent breaking up a fight. But here, Sir Topham Hatt is oblivious to the engines having a meeting and forming an alliance. This was a much better route to take. We're even presented with nice Diesels such as Mavis and Rusty to show that it's not all black and white. And while I don't like how he's interpreted in this movie, I like what Diesel 10 symbolizes. He's the big final boss, and once he's convinced to help, the Steamy versus Diesel feud has officially ended. Yeah, obviously everything resets in the show, but I thought it was handled tastefully. Calling All Engines has a well-executed moral and fantastic physical props and sets, but it's also a little boring, and very babyish. It wasn't worth getting a head injury for as a kid. Yeah, I know, Magic Railroad is in the top 5, and I went in knowing I was going to piss off diehard fans. Thomas and the Magic Railroad was the first full-length theatrical film 25 years ago and has been an iconic part of many childhoods. It's the same for me, don't get me wrong, but as I've grown up, I've become less biased to the things I love, or the things that made my childhood, and ignoring the memories I had and just watching the film as it is, Magic Railroad is not really good as I remember. The plot of the movie is everywhere and extremely messy, and it would have been even more judging off of the extended version. I didn't come for the human drama or magic, I came to watch some talking trains. The fact that there's actually live-action humans, and that the island of Sodor isn't talked about as a real place just west of England, kind of ruins what made Thomas the Tank Engine so special. The only unrealistic part of the franchise are the talking phases, but everything else feels legit. From the detailed props and stunning set designs, and cleverly weaving real railway laws and history to the world building, the island of Sodor felt like a real place. You can't help but feel immersed. Magic Railroad doesn't have that. The island is in a different dimension, the trains are alive because of magic, there's flower phones, windmills act like Ferris wheels. It completely kills everything. The magic destroyed the magic. Despite the negatives I mentioned, it isn't all bad. The soundtrack is so beautiful and iconic. The casting, excluding James and Percy, are really good. The personalities of the STEAM team are so on point, and Diesel 10, while a nonsensical concept, is a fun villain. I ended up liking the ending chase way more than I previously did. I may be breezing through all of this, both the pros and the cons of the movie, and I'm not only doing this to keep this video short, but because I talked about all of these in detail in a past video. I'll put the link into that in the description, but be warned, I was a little bit vicious in that review. At least I see it that way. I still have the same opinions I did then, but I'm sure I could have worded them better. I just really care about the Thomas franchise and wish it got better treatment. Maybe Britt Allcroft saw something in Magic Railroad that we didn't. She, of all people, definitely did not have bad intentions with Thomas. Magic Railroad might have left a sore spot in Thomas's legacy, but at least it's a comfy movie to watch. Tale of the Brave is probably the movie with the least to be said, and before watching this film, I kept forgetting this one exists. Regardless, I have this up so high for a reason. It's actually watchable, first of all. There are a lot of bits that just make me roll my eyes, such as the pink elephants on parade or end credits song, or how sometimes the tone would unexpectedly shift and ruin the moment. Like, sorry I can't enjoy this beautiful ending when I get blasted with There is a lot of stuff to enjoy from this movie, however, like Bill and Ben returning to the franchise, or the 2D flashback of Gator. The new characters are kind of a mixed bag for me. Gator is great, but I wish we got to know why he's on Sodor other than waiting for a boat home. Marion is alright, I guess, and every time she speaks, I just hear Mama Bear from Puss in Boots' Last Wish. And while they're both fine, characters like Timothy and Reg are kind of dull. Reg only got to talk and appear for only a minute. There's a lot going on with the story, like there's 3 character arcs going on at the same time, and while you think I complain about it, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of the Railway series books where there's 3 stories and then a 4th story where everything comes together. Thomas has to learn to have faith in his best friend, Percy needs to learn to not be afraid and be brave, and James has to learn to not be an instigator. Then it ends with the climax and all is now well. It's kind of nice. I really love this trio's dynamic. Tale of the Brave is far from a favorite of mine, but nonetheless, I feel perfectly comfortable ranking it this high. The Great Race is a lot like Journey Beyond Sodor, except having the opposite result. I went in expecting to rank this lower, but I ended up liking it. It's still like a 5 out of 10 for me, but regardless, let's start off with the negatives first. Biggest crime is the execution on the movie's concept. A railway show is being held on the mainland where many competitions take place. This is the most exciting and hyped up part of the movie. However, we have to sit through over 30 minutes of Thomas wanting to prove himself before we even get our first look at the railway show. And once that happens, the whole thing is rushed. We don't get to enjoy any of the competitions because we never get time to. We don't even get to see how the strength competition ends or who the winner was. We just get told by Henry that he finished in last place. Also, small complaint. Henry would have had no trouble with his load. Anybody who's read Super Rescue would know what I'm talking about. The Thomas plot has also been done to death before. It's the 3 strikes formula that the writers have used many times during the Hit and Sharon Miller eras. Thomas wants to be fast and fails. Thomas wants to be decorated and fails. And then the 3rd time really screws him over. And to make it even more predictable, Thomas attends the show at the last minute, forfeits the competition to be nice, and still wins in the end. Absolutely boring. Then there's also a side plot for whatever reason where Diesel wants to make himself look stronger to get in the competition. It's extremely pointless. It only leads to Thomas having an accident and not being able to go to the railway show. That's it. I would have thought that it wouldn't stop there and Diesel would actually make it to the show with the crates. Whether that turned into comedic hijinks or Diesel getting found out, I don't know. For God's sake, he even had his own song. I fully agree with the Unlucky Tug's opinion that this should have been a movie about Gordon. Not only were all the pieces there to make a good Gordon story worthy of a feature-length film, but Percy got 2 movies before this, and later James, sort of. It would have made Gordon getting streamlined and the Flying Scotsman making an appearance make much more sense. And I have a sneaky suspicion that this was what the writers were trying to do, but because of Mattel and the power of Thomas, they pushed Gordon's story to the side. So that was a lot of crap that I listed. But believe it or not, there's a lot of good things to talk about. I already explained how the titular railway show was rushed, but nonetheless, it's exciting and entertaining. I loved Gordon's story in this, and it sucks that it wasn't expanded. It absolutely amazes me that they finally brought the famous Flying Scotsman to the CGI series. And they even kept the book canon of him and Gordon being brothers. That's awesome. And oh my god, the songs. There are a lot of them in this movie, but surprisingly, they're good? Like, actually good songs in a Thomas movie? Up until this film, every time we got to a song number, I just tune out, because many of them aren't good or just disrupt the story. Here, my interest was firmly grasped. Will You Won't You surprised me when I first heard it, and seeing all these recurring characters was such a treat. Daisy, Stanley, Stafford, what? And I'll just come out and be honest that streamlining was stuck in my head for the past 2 months. It's actually catchy as hell! I love how they utilize Annie and Clarabelle as backup vocals. That's so creative. The Great Race is the most surprising entry on this list for me, without a doubt. I expected to rank this way lower, but I ended up sort of enjoying it. It has its sore spots, yeah, like the clearly corporate meddling with the bullshit bridge jump and the numerous colorful engines because, toys. It's nonetheless okay. Wish I had more time to cook in the oven, but what are you gonna do? The Great Big Final Goodbye to All Model Thomas and Friends has made it into my top 4, and boy is there a lot to say. The fact that they dug through storage and brought in every single character for this occasion is just so sweet. It's enough to make a grown man cry. And the set designs are much more beautiful and impressive than Magic Railroad's. I absolutely appreciate how this film doesn't act like another Calling All Engines, where it has stupid learning segments and song numbers that interrupt the story. There are songs in this film, yeah, but they don't interrupt the flow of the movie. They work into the story. The difference is like the court jester versus the Little Mermaid. One makes the story come to a complete halt with its song numbers, while the other is integral to the plot and understanding the character. Though I'm going to be shockingly honest and say that the Great Race's songs are still better. I love the world building with Great Waterton, and I'm surprised that's not seen in the CGI series. The idea of a dilapidated mining town in the heart of Sodor is so neat. I can't also leave out the fact that we finally get a movie solely on Thomas and nobody else. And it's taking a focus on his flaws, his own pride and ego. And the big fuck up that lands him into trouble isn't through some big misunderstanding. He actually screwed up and it's all his fault. Of course, this movie does have its negatives. The biggest one being Pierce Brosnan. He's a breath of fresh air, don't get me wrong, but he's just kind of not my cup of tea, and I felt this way ever since I was a child. He does a good job narration-wise, and it sounds like he's reading a bedtime story, but man, is it slow and quiet. This next negative might get me lynched by the fandom, but Nia, the movie version at least, has more depth to her personality than Stanley does. Stanley is just a plot device to make Thomas jealous. His entire personality aligns with the TV show version of Nia. Friendly, helpful, and kind. He's just not really interesting. How exactly did he win the other engines over? We never get to see that. Stanley is just another generic nice guy character. The rap song at the end always bugged me as a kid, but after doing a Twitter stings on it, it quickly grew on me. It's a very touching farewell to the model era, and it's such a banger. The Great Discovery has gotten all its praises, but I still feel like it's underrated. We're talking way too much about Big World, Big Adventures and All Engines Go. The Great Discovery is, in my opinion, the best model series movie, and looking at its competition, I don't think it was even a challenge, honestly. It's action-packed, it's such visual eye candy, it's full of fan service. We definitely ended an era with a pretty good movie.
The children get a day off school to hunt for you know who.
It's just like Hero of the Rails, but better. It's about a film where Thomas discovers an engine who doesn't want to be discovered by Sir Topham Hatt, and there's an antagonist who wants to expose the strange engine's whereabouts, but Blue Mountain Mystery's take on this plot is more interesting. We get a whole new cast of characters that we have not seen in a long time, and a more mysterious background that makes things less predictable. Bringing the narrow gauge engines back is just so awesome, and they perfectly fit with the narrative. Having their own rails and living high up in the mountains far away from the standard gauge engines makes them having their own secrets believable. I'd also like to address the clear attempt at undoing the hit era's interpretation on the narrow gauge. You can especially tell with Scarlowe, who prior to this movie was the baby of the group, whereas in the books, Scarlowe is the oldest living engine on the island of Sodor. So hearing this mistake finally corrected by making him wise and powerful is just such a relief. I mentioned how the mystery is more unpredictable than the one in Hero of the Rails, and that's because the situation is much more drastic. Hero was hiding because he didn't want Sir Topham Hatt thinking he's old and not useful, and then send him for scrap, whereas Luke pushed an engine into the sea. We know what Sir Topham Hatt will do with a dilapidated engine. He's going to restore them like he has done many times. He's that sympathetic, but we don't know what he'd do in this situation. Is he actually going to send Luke away? Will there be a trial to figure out the full story? Does he even know the full story? Will he just forgive Luke? It's a new premise for this franchise, so again, it's unpredictable, and I actually prefer this plot more than Hero of the Rails. I also like Thomas in this movie. First off, he's not at the quarry just because. They create a plausible reason for him to be working at the quarry, that being Paxton being damaged, so Thomas is taking his place. Thomas isn't even annoying in this film. He's a detective character who's witnessing everything happening around him, and his relationship with Annie and Clarabelle was so charming. I remember how taken aback I was hearing these two actually speak and act like characters. And do you know how astounding it is that this film turned a blank slate background character from Day of the Diesels into one of the biggest fan favorite characters in the CGI era? Talk about one for the history books. And I'm not going to spoil this last character for those who haven't watched it, but I appreciate that they went with an already existing character instead of a new one. It makes it so that character has more depth to them, and in the end, made them much more interesting and likable. Of course, there are some nitpicks I have that stop this film from being higher. Diesel is fine in this movie, but like Spencer, I can't understand his reasoning why he wants Luke sent away, other than him being a dick and wanting to provoke Thomas. And his way of rubbing this in is extremely irritating to watch. I also don't like that the Blue Mountain Quarry has replaced the Skarloey Railway. That's a change that has always pissed me off. And finally, this might be my biggest hot take in this video, but the Working Together song just isn't my cup of tea anymore. It's good with the narrative both times, but I just find it obnoxious. So yeah, Blue Mountain Mystery was very confounding to me upon this rewatch. I fortunately came out of this enjoying it, but now also having gripes. It's no longer my favorite Thomas movie, but I'm happy to have it in my top 3 nonetheless. A good story with great characters, and a fantastic mystery element. Man, do I have so many good things to say about The Adventure Begins. And where do I even start? I guess the negatives, which are so minuscule that it doesn't really bother me that much. The only things I don't like about this movie is how they wrote Henry and Thomas. Instead of Henry being vain and not wanting to get his paint wet, the writers decided to make him actually be afraid of the rain. That's one of my biggest gripes with Thomas and Friends in the later seasons. They did nothing with Henry, Edward, and Toby other than character assassinate them. Why the f*** would you do that? Fortunately in this movie, Edward is back to his wise and likable self, but they rewrote Henry in order for Thomas to get more character interactions and screen time, and now it forever leaves a sour taste on this film. Speaking of Thomas, while he's perfectly fine in this movie, I would have preferred if they kept him to his cheeky and mischievous self from the books, instead of making him a nice character from the start. That was the whole point of his character arc, watching him grow from a prick to a responsible engine. It's what makes him getting a branch line so rewarding. In here, however, there's no sauce to his character because his growth is non-existent. It makes this version of Thomas's beginning underdeveloped. Luckily, everything else with The Adventure Begins makes up for these. They took these very short episodes, recreated them in CGI, and expanded the series. They're like Trampy's videos, only more kid-friendly and less hilarious. It was so neat seeing a remake of the very first Thomas episode I ever saw, Edward's Day Out. And there's so many small things they added to these stories. They actually gave the faceless breakdown train sentences and names, and even showed us Thomas's origins with his old livery. Percy got a cool foreshadowing at the end of the movie. Thomas and Edward have a touching student-teacher relationship, which is better than their friendship in season 1. And that's just some of it. I can't express how amazing it was hearing the classic score reused for Gordon, Thomas, and Sir Topham Hatt's theme. Hearing Really Useful Engine and the Troublesome Truck songs gave me goosebumps. And the ending with the Really Useful Engine song mixed with the book illustrations was so touching the whole way through. And I think the experience was even more magical because I had watched this film on the 80th anniversary. Saving this towards the end of my Thomas marathon was a smart move. However, there is one more film to discuss. Let's just confess, we all knew what was going to be the best Thomas movie. I hadn't watched it in a long time, but even back then, it had me shocked. Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure deserves to be at number 1 because it feels theater-worthy. It's something every major IP wants to have. I'm not saying it has the same level of authenticity and brilliance as the Lego Movie, but that the people behind this movie went all out to make sure that this has genuine care put into it. It's easily the most stunning looking Thomas movie to date, with excellent lighting and terrific camera angles. The score is absolutely jaw-dropping. They didn't need to go this hard for a movie about Thomas the Tank Engine, and yet they did. Oh my god. Yes, there are some gripes I have with this movie, like nearly every film I've ever seen. That being Marion's role and the Never Overlook a Little Engine song. They're not bad, but they're the only moments in the movie where it feels like we're back to the silly kid stuff. I actually do like the appearance of the Arlesdale engines. When Mike, Rex, and Bert finally got adapted into something, that was my endgame moment. Actual book-exclusive characters that wouldn't have been possible to adapt for the model era. The story for Legends of the Lost Treasure is also really good. The whole events of this film is based off of a tiny little lore dump from Wilbur and Christopher Audrey, and I think that's awesome. Do you think a Thomas fan from 15 years ago would believe you if you said they would make a movie centered on the extension to Harwick and the 18th century smugglers at Arlesdale? They'd probably scoff and laugh in your face because Mattel is Mattel and they can't read. I also don't think I can go on without mentioning our main villain. And yes, he's not an antagonist. He's an actual, irredeemable villain who literally threatens to kill a character. The fact that he's a human instead of a machine opens so many story possibilities and ultimately makes Sailor John much more of a sinister threat. Diesel 10 may have a claw, but he can only stay on rails and needs fuel to move. They don't even play down how menacing and dangerous Sailor John is, from hitting Thomas with an oar, throwing dynamite, breaking and entering, and threatening to murder Skiff. The twist villain trope is also used fairly well. His true intentions are fully displayed to the audience, but not to Thomas. This makes it where you're not getting tricked by the narrative, but get to wait for the protagonist to piece everything together and realize they're being played. It also helps that Thomas figures out Sailor John's plan fairly quickly thanks to the snappy pacing. I also really like Thomas's characterization in this movie. It perfectly captures his cheeky and cocky self that we're so familiar with in those Railway series books. The later seasons really neutered him and made him too nice. Now he's just a generic happy-go-lucky mascot character who does the Pillsbury Doughboy laugh for some reason. But I think this is the only movie on this list that gets his personality traits down perfectly. I love how his number 1 is covered up for most of the movie to visually show how far Thomas has fallen. A rare moment of show don't tell. Ryan's presence in the film is just like Stanley's in The Great Discovery, just better. Thomas feeling threatened by a bigger and stronger tank engine is more understandable because Ryan is bigger and stronger. Stanley was the exact same size as Thomas, so I don't understand why the story needed to state that. And unlike Stanley, we get to witness firsthand how Ryan gets the other engines to like him. Unfortunately, Ryan is reduced to the typical nice guy trait that you see with nearly every single new engine ever. But at least he's not like Stanley. I also need to talk about the insane casting. They got legendary actor John Hurt to play Sailor John, frickin' Ollivander, Kane from the first Alien movie, and Oxley from Indiana Jones, and Eddie Redmayne to play Ryan, Jamie Campbell Bower, Olivia Colman? What was the budget for the casting? The Harry Potter half of my brain is just blown away from this. I think that's just about all I can praise about this movie without this segment being too long. Yes, at the end of the day, it's still a movie for kids, but as an old Thomas fan, I think Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure is phenomenal. From the good character writing, the fantastic story, the numerous reoccurring characters, the darker tone that feels refreshing, having an actual good villain, and how much of a love letter it is to the franchise, and to its fans, both new and old. It's everything a Thomas and Friends fan could want, especially for a cinematic feature-length film. It's a 7 out of 10 movie, and is such a treasure.
Say that again?
Okay, oh my god. Thank you all so much for watching. Please spay and neuter your pets, and in the meantime, I'm never, ever, ever going to announce a big project so early on. This has been on the back of my mind for exactly a whole year now by the time this comes out. I'm exhausted, I'm relieved, good night. Wait a minute, what do you mean I started the Barbie ranking back in 2022?